Set the phasers to kill. Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant do exactly what the Brooklyn Nets fan base expects them to do in a lockdown playoff opportunity at home against the Cleveland Cavaliers. We're going to talk about that near perfect performance from Kyrie, the all-around stylings of one Kevin Durant, and the supporting cast big time performances across the board here. We break it all down right after the theme music.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Brooklyn, yo. That's right. It's the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the playoff Brooklyn Nets, every single day. Over there, you're going to find Doug Norrie, DFSR, owner, operator, all your daily fantasy ranking needs. He's got you covered. I'm Adam Armbrecht, breaking down the New York Football Giants as they push towards the NFL draft on the One Giant podcast. We thank you for making us your first listen of the day, free on all those great platforms, my friend. And it's free to sit back and watch the beautiful performance that we got ourselves this night as the Brooklyn Nets locked it up, man. It was a 7-8 in playing game, Doug. They needed it. They wanted it. And they came out and showed exactly how dominant this team can be.
Yeah, man, they played a really good game. I know that this game was a 7-point win. I know there's probably times where you get a little clenchy about how the game's getting close, whatnot. But in the end, I thought they just played a really, really complete game here. They needed to go out and take care of business. I wouldn't say they needed to win this game, but it makes a huge difference winning this game and just getting into the playoffs, being able to rest some guys, not have to go back out. There's a lot of other stuff on the line here besides just just one game and a play-in. But I thought from a performance standpoint, like, this was about what you want to see from them. It was really good. I'm super excited. This is exactly what I wanted to see from this team coming out of the gate.
Yeah, you mentioned about the rest piece of it. It can't be overlooked. You now don't have to play again like Cleveland will on Friday night before turning around and getting into the playoffs. They get these handful of extra days off. We know there's a couple of bodies on this roster that could use that time, including Kevin Durant, including Kyrie Irving. But to your point, man, we always talk about this throughout the season. There were games when the Brooklyn Nets were up big on good or bad teams, and you got that feeling in the pit of your stomach of, well, I don't know, like something doesn't feel like it's going the right way here in the second half, third and fourth quarter. This one, however, for as close as it got, it is directly linked to some of these big performances that we'll get into in a second, but it just did not have the sense, for everything that Cleveland did not have on the court tonight, with no Jared Allen obviously being the biggest component. This was a matter of when the Brooklyn Nets put this game away, not if.
100%. They were up 40-20 in the first quarter. And look, sometimes you get a big lead so you can give a little bit of it away. Like that's just kind of the nature of basketball sometimes. And I thought this game, like, I can usually judge games and closeness by, and this is going to sound so corny because usually I feel like I'm pretty analytical about just about everything else. I can tell, I think, the actual reality of the closeness of a game by sort of just how nervous I feel. Right? Like how nervous I feel in any given game. Because I actually think at times I'm overly nervous around situations that don't really require it. I never felt I felt, me. I get a little weird about some stuff sometimes. This one, I never felt that way. I just never felt that way. 40-20 at the end of the first quarter. Yes, there was times where Cleveland stormed back. There was a few times where you get the second chance points rear their ugly head. But for the most part, on a high level, like, at what point did you really actually worry? Not like, okay, they're coming back, or, there's going to be a little comeback here, or the Nets going to be able to extend their lead once again. And that's really what it was mostly. It was like, are they going to continue to be able to extend their lead? It's not like, hey, we're not trading baskets at any point here. Right. We are just trying to maintain a healthy lead that we have. And that's the testament to this Nets team. Like, this is a contending looking team. We'll talk about it later in the week about where we see their actual trajectory now going forward. But I thought this was a first step in, hey, this is how good we can play against other good teams. And it might have been a mistake for Boston to try to want to play us, right? Like whoever lucked out or didn't luck out with a 2 seed has to look at this game with with the Nets and say to themselves, they have a level that they can get to. And yes, it was a 7-point game, but I would say they were still at that level this game.
Yeah, and just to tie that up there, in the second quarter, at one point, late in the second quarter, going towards the break, the Nets had only scored 8 points. They put up 40 in the first quarter, and then they were at 48. And the reason why I think the nerves never really came unsettled is because in a stretch like that, when you only score 8 points, depending on the opposition, well, you should be down by that point then, right? If you're single digits that deep into the second quarter going towards the break,
Yeah.
you might be trailing. And then if you are trailing at that point, that's where you feel like the wheels come off here a little bit. And funnily enough, I think one of the reasons why it doesn't bother me too much in those moments is because we've seen how when Brooklyn, by the way, had trailed big in some games. Now, down the stretch of the season, they did a great job of coming back from those deficits and getting the wins when they needed them. But at other times in the year, it was all the energy and effort that you expend just to make it a game again. You end up suffering some of those lulls over the third and fourth quarter. And I think that's what happened to Cleveland here, too. You do everything that you can there in the second quarter, 23-17. You get yourself back into it a little bit. But every big surge took maximum effort from them, where on the Nets side of things, it felt somewhat effortless. Listen, man, if you're a team in the Eastern Conference who was noodling around what might make the most sense for you, I can't see how you look at a roster that has Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and go, yeah, maybe that's our best bet here.
Well, and actually that is like takes us to like the next point of like why I kind of never felt that worried about this is because you look on the screen and you just remind yourself, oh, they have number 11, they have number 7 here, and these guys are absolutely dialed in, right? They never look nervous. Like Kyrie Irving played as about a perfect a game on the offensive end as you can play. Like that was, and we've known him to step up in big games. This has been sort of a thing that's just been around his whole career. When the lights shine the brightest, for the most part for him, outside of like a kind of a weird stint in Boston, for the most part, like this is where this guy can dial it up. He's done it other times this season. I felt like the game against Philly, and this was another one. It's like, hey, I need to go out there and I need to play pretty much perfectly. 12 for 15, drop 34, 12 assists, 7 for 7 from the line. And, he combined with Kevin Durant, they were just having the kind of game tonight that lent itself to like sort of maximum comfort level.
Yeah.
Right. Like that. And you could just tell it was, even when it looked a little more difficult, it never looked hard.
No, and when you're talking about especially Kyrie Irving, and we've said this is a guy that you don't worry about or have the concerns when you see some off shooting performances because he can dial it up at any moment. But I think, and this is gonna carry over here for an extended conversation. When Kyrie is doing that, he ended up going 12-15. He had his first 12. He only missed the last 3-point perimeter attempts in this game, 34 points in total. When he is dialed in like that offensively, it just starts to open things up in a different way. We talked about it when we were on with the Locked On Cavs guys previewing this game. Some of these big performances from Kevin Durant in his facilitating capacity. Kyrie Irving, we haven't had a chance to see a lot of this really when you think about the team being complete and Seth Curry being out there and as close to fully healthy as they're going to be. I think that he's getting back into that pure offensively driven bag in a different way than we were, I think, massaging our mind when we had James Harden over the past year and a half, right? Things looked and felt differently about what the requirements were going to be. Now, all of a sudden, they've rotated these roles a little bit. And when Kyrie's firing like this is what we always say about him. The dude has no business being as successful at navigating the lane and getting to the basket. And by the way, in this one, he didn't actually do a lot of that. This was a lot of mid-range game that he was using, but he's flawless in his execution. And just like we said with Kevin Durant, it's the height, it's the size. But for Kyrie, it's just, when he's pure, he's pure. And it looked like he was fully dialed in from tip on this one.
And that was what it was, right? It was like this, like I said, maximum comfort level in this game. I think it bleeds to the rest of the team too. Like no one actually felt like they needed to force shots. No one felt like they needed to get nervous. No one needed to felt like they lose assignments. Because I think when these two guys are dialed in, we've talked about this many times, that the trickle down effect that they have on the rest of the team around just being able to play their best versions of their own individual basketball. Yeah, sometimes shots aren't going to go in. Sometimes the open looks aren't going to go in too. That's okay. Because for the most part, when you are teammates with these guys and they are playing like this, it's not been like this all the time for Kyrie. He's had some off shooting games for sure. But when they are like this, in this version of it, you are going to be hard pressed to beat them. Dude, Kevin Durant and Kyrie, like, I don't know, did I say this before? They combined for an 80% true shooting percentage in this game.
Hello.
Like, that's ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous. The best in the league true shooting was like 70%. Like the true best games of all time are in the hundreds, right? But to combine in essentially a playoff game for an 80% true shooting between the two guys is literally like as efficient as you can ever hope two guys to be combined in a basketball game.
Yep.
And when that happens, you are going to see sort of the result here, which is like, hey, not everything else went perfectly, and it was still kind of an easy win.
Yeah, and this is why, again, we talk about leading up to this game, the closeout of the season. When you have these two players, you feel like, yes, put me in a game like this. And we talked about it, right? You could not assume that this was a win. Everyone that wanted to talk about what's the matchup going to look like in the playoffs. Well, you still have to sit there and say you have to go win this game first. And by the way, it's affirmation of the confidence that you should have when you get a performance like this. Anything, by the way, I'll put it this way, and then we'll get into Kevin Durant in a second here, but anything less than this type of performance from Kyrie Irving, from Kevin Durant. I mean, Kyrie doesn't have to, go as electric as he did from the field, but overall, like, this is what I expected these two players to do in this game. Anything shy of it would have been, hey man, even if they won the game and they didn't look as good as they did, you would have said, you got to be better right now in this moment. You're 4 days away from starting the NBA playoffs. You need to be showcasing how dominant you can be in a game and how you can, of course, take them over. I want to get into Kevin Durant and his incredible performance, making him, I guess, the second best player in the game. But coming up next, I'll also tell you why the Brooklyn Nets had the third best player on the court and just who that was right after we tell you about our friends over at Shady Rays. Oh, Shady Rays, an independent sunglass company that gives you the features of $200 sunglasses for a fraction of the price. That means polarized lenses, they're well constructed, durable frames, and premium high-end finishes. Also, something you won't find anywhere else is that Shady Rays has an insane protection program. If you have them lost or broken, they will give you an automatic replacement on every single pair. How about that? Doesn't matter how you lose them. Doesn't matter how it goes south. Doesn't matter if it's on top of your head and you didn't know where they were. They've got you covered. It's as simple as that. Plus, 10 meals are donated to fight hunger in America when you shop with Shady Rays. It's a win-win, man. Protect your eyes, protect the hungry. I don't know how you could not go over to Shady Rays and get in on this. You hit up shadyrays.com right now and use promo code Locked On to get 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses right now. That's code Locked On for their best deal of the season. 50% off 2 or more pairs of Shady Rays sunglasses backed by over 150,000 verified reviews. All right, so before we get into the third best player, also located on the Brooklyn Nets, we might as well do something that we've had to do several times throughout the year, Doug, and that's talk about Kevin Durant in this somewhat passive way. Like, oh, did you happen to notice the performance that he gave? Did what we talked about coming into it, wondering if this is something that he can utilize more? And it does feel like, for as kind of light switch flipped as it feels late in the season, he's leaning into a different facet of his game, drawing the attention of the defense and trusting those around him to be successful with their opportunities. He was full facilitator to start this game. Didn't even have, I think he had 2 shots over the first quarter plus before he really started to lean into, obviously, what he can do, score.
Yeah, look, the two of them combined for 59 points. They also combined for 23 assists. And if you are going to work to sell out the double team as much as possible, these two guys, which when you have this kind of defensive personnel that the Cavs have, you kind of have to. Like, you have to pick your poison at that point and say, it's either Kevin Durant gets easy looks on Lauri Markkanen or Karis LeVert, or we try to make it a little more difficult and hope that the other guys don't beat us. And that's just kind of, again, like it's a devil's bargain you need to make when you have this kind of defensive personnel that the Cavs have. Yep. And Kevin Durant sort of understands that. We talked about multiple times now, and credit to you. You were one of the first people to really pick up on this after the James Harden trade, was that he was going to need to begin to facilitate offense more than just be a strict scorer. You have been 100% right. And it's totally played out in the aggregate this way, where the assist numbers, like, he's just an assist guy now. Yeah. like 25 and 11. But it's because some of it's because the guys we're going to talk about shortly that are able to finish and the more confidence around them. But it's just this cascading effect of he has much more confidence in kind of like these other dudes. And they went zone a bunch on him. They crushed the zone with Drummond and guys like this. And a lot of this was because he is just able to give the ball up in advantageous situations. Kyrie did the same thing also. Give it up. When the going is good, they'll take their shots. But when it doesn't look perfect, or even when it's like a little tough, and these guys can make most of the tough ones too, when it's not like even like that, hey, we just have these other teammates that we can go to. And if Durant is going to be like that and the other guys are going to perform, this is the other part of the Nets sort of algebra calculus that just makes them a super difficult team, actually more than the sum of their parts, right? Yes. Because he's just trusting them in a way that we haven't really seen. I mean, honestly, maybe for his whole career outside of when he played with the Warriors, because they just had transcendent talents just all around them.
Yeah, and by the way, this is a response to, as you look inside the box score, it goes 42 minutes, 9 to 16, gives you 25 by the end of it to go along with those 11 assists. And also, by the way, 3 blocks. This is why we say all around game here.
Timely blocks too,
Yeah,
like super timely blocks on 2 of them were on recoveries where they kind of got rolled in the pick and roll, and he recovered once on Love, another on Mobley, and I forget who the third one was on, but they were both kind of like at key points of the game where the Nets could really use stops. And yeah, so anyway, sorry to interrupt you, but they weren't just like random sort of throwaway blocks. They were like, hey, this would be a really nice time for the other team not to get a basket, and he came up big.
Yeah, 100%. So just to round back around, and we talk about getting into the assist side of his game. Remember, he's talked about over the second half of this season how the looks that defenses are throwing at him, what the blitzing double teams. It's a new way that teams are approaching trying to get him off the ball and get the ball out of his hands. Now, whether or not this is a small sample size at the back end of the year, can teams be successful doing that when you have Kyrie Irving out there? And that's what I think the fun push and pull here has been. Yeah, the opposition wants to say, okay, we'll live with the results away from Kevin Durant, but you haven't really had full-time Kyrie fully available. So I think, to your point, like the calculus that the opposition is doing is probably, the numbers are probably a little bit fudged because you don't realize obviously Kyrie's impact, but then the supporting cast, which was upgraded significantly from what it means for Kevin Durant to trust the players around him, the addition of Drummond, the addition of Seth Curry, like these are the pieces that needed to be a part of this, even if tonight, not a big game from Curry, but there was the third best player on the court that showed his value and showcased why Kevin Durant can go, okay, yeah, come at me. There's going to be this second option behind you who, by the way, is equally as adept at making the right basketball decision once the ball is in his hands.
Yeah, dude, Bruce Brown was amazing. Like,
Say his name.
Is he better than Darius Garland? Of course not. But for this purposes of this game, for like what the Nets needed him to do, and if you were going to be one of like the top 5 best players on the court, which he definitely was in this game, 100%, maybe just the 4th best player. Like, let's throw Garland in front of him because let's just be honest, like no team would take Bruce Brown over Darius Garland, rightfully so. But after that, like look where we are with this situation, right? Would you rather have this is so funny to think about this because it happens in this game. In this game, would you rather have Bruce Brown or Karis LeVert? Because the Nets had him, like, and they don't have many more. And there's no one in basketball right now that would take Karis LeVert over Bruce Brown. Like, that's just point stop. I love Karis LeVert, but like, look at this game that Bruce Brown just played. Bruce Brown is the reason, almost 1-to-1, why Kevin Durant had like 11 assists. I know they did not all go to Bruce Brown, but why Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are comfortable giving the ball up.
Yeah,
right. Like, because they know that when Bruce Brown flashes in the lane, good things just continue to happen. Last year, it was like he would finish with the floater. Now it's he finishes with the floater, or he gets like the legendary Bruce Brown, the Nick Claxton 2-man game going that they're going to write history books about.
4 times in this one. They worked that.
I think it was like 4 times in like out of 6 possessions or something too. It was an entire set of the 4th quarter where they just went because the Cavs were selling out, and that it was like in the middle of that soft defense because there's no defenders helping, and they just made right decision after right decision. Bruce Brown was absolutely unbelievable. Once again, this is not new. We've been on the beating this drum for a while. 18 points, 9 rebounds, 8 assists, 3 steals, plus 16 in the game. He was just the 3rd best player on like a really good playoff team. And we would never have said that about Bruce Brown at the beginning of the season. And we've been beating the drum for like a long time now.
Yeah, I tell you, the 9 rebounds, the 8 assists are obviously huge. Plus 16, as we like to say, when it works in our favor to our point, we're going to use those numbers. Only other player, he's right there with Kevin Durant, plus 16. They led the team. So that combination was obviously incredibly effective. And, they talked about it in the game coverage too, where, and we mentioned this going back on the podcast, he was frustrated early in the season, his role, he's losing minutes to guys that aren't even on the roster anymore at this point. But he said that when he went to Steve Nash and expressed that frustration, Nash's response was lean in on the defensive end, like become a leader on the defensive end first, and the offensive side of things are going to flow. And for as good as Bruce Brown has always been defensively since he joined this team, he has been even more impressive in that area of his game, I think, this season and certainly down the stretch. And we've seen it just kind of one feeds off the other. The confidence that he builds on the defensive end is why, in a very different way from last season or even earlier this year, when he gets the ball in his hands offensively, there is a high level of trust that he is not just going to try to work into the middle of the lane and have his floater, which we all love, or drive at the basket, make it maybe look for the foul. He's dropping it off to Claxton on the lobs. He's kicking it back outside to Kevin Durant. There just seems to be a real growing level of trust behind Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. And you need that. Like at this point, when you look over this roster, Dragic comes back from protocols. He just gets his toe in the water there. Seth Curry still nursing the ankle, has a quiet performance tonight. Like Bruce Brown's the guy that's been around Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. So there has to be that developed level of trust, and it seems to be growing and peaking at the all-time perfect opportunity. Highlighted, by the way, he was the player inbounding the ball late in this game to make sure it was getting to Kyrie Irving, to Kevin Durant before those fouls came from Cleveland.
He led the team in shots.
Bang.
He had 19 shots. He in a must win. Let's just call it a must win because it's just for the sake of context. Right. In a must win game on a team that you play with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, he took 19 shots to lead all nets. Like Garland had more shots than he did, and there was never a time where I thought Bruce Brown took a bad shot. No. Right? Like, and
very that, smart, controlled play. Yeah.
If there's a testament to how this game played out, it's that. I think it's like he led the team in shots. If you knew Bruce Brown led the team, if you go into the game, if you knew Bruce Brown led the team in shots, you would have thought like Kevin Durant and Kyrie got hit by a bus on like the way to the game, and then that's just like the that's where like something else happened. There's just no way you would have thought they got killed or something really weird happened. No, all 19 shots. I mean, give or take, I guess, but made sense in the context of what was happening here for the Nets. And that is just another testament to what they have with this guy. And it's just a marvel. I think I'm not overstating it. By the way, like I tweeted jokingly sort of about last week about Bruce Brown was the third best player on a championship contender that no one's really heard of before. I was sort of tongue in cheeking that and not really. Like he's just been that good. And finally on the national broadcast, they're talking about him. Finally, people are starting to take notice. The thing that we've noticed for a long time, that this guy is just like, he's not just good for the Nets. He's just legit good.
Yeah.
Right?
And you know what? You mentioned Karis LeVert in this game. We talk about a lot of players on championship teams across the league, but specifically to the Nets, guys that have come and gone. And Bembry earlier in the year, and you dream on what all the possibilities of these players. Bruce Brown is a guy that has now gone beyond the idea of you're someone behind superstars that is effective because of the superstars. No, just like when they added Seth Curry, this is a guy that does things at all three levels, on a shooting side of things offensively, and also in all facets of the game that helps to make the team better. And that's why these key players matter the most. Like we're going to get into it later in the week with the matchup coming up against Boston. Players like this matter because they can replicate what they're doing for you right now, unlike bubble up performances that you cannot rely on with consistency.
All right, we're going to talk a little bit more about this game. We'll talk about little Claxton. We'll talk a little bit about that two-man duo as well. Got to first talk to you about our friends over at Built Bar. You know, it's that time of year. New Year's resolutions seem to be going out the window. You made some promises to yourself about staying healthy, about eating the right stuff, about maybe getting more protein into your diet. Built Bar should have you covered if you started falling off that wagon, or maybe you just stuck with them the whole time like we have. That's because the Built Bar makes it super easy. They got all the stats to back it up on the health piece. They also have the taste thing figured out, which, in the past, other protein bars, it's like that cardboardy, spongy kind of texture to it. Not Built Bar. 100% covered in chocolate. They focus on the flavors as well and the stats to back it up. 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, just 4 net carbs, 17 grams of protein. If you stack it up against the grocery store candy bar, 240, I can't even read these numbers, 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, forget about it. Dozens of net carbs, get them out of my face. And then the flavors: coconut, almond, mint, brownie, white chocolate, cookies, and cream. The stuff's actually healthy for you, folks. You go to built.com, use promo code LOCK15, get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com.
And if you're talking about getting yourself healthy and wanting to stay healthy, you have to be using AG1 from Athletic Greens. I'll tell you why, friends. We back up the products that we talk about on this show. I know for a fact that Doug was having a nice tall glass with his AG1 this morning, as was I. There he is. You know why? Because Doug's a fit man. He wants to stay fit, wants to be fit. I have an issue getting up in the morning, getting through my work schedule, and still finding a way to get a healthy dose of everything that I need in my body without diverting to pork roll, egg, and cheese. It's delicious. I'm from New Jersey. Why wouldn't I? Bottom line is with AG1, you get something that tastes good and also gives you all of the key nutrients that you need to have in your system. Why? Because it is, with just one delicious scoop of AG1, you're going to be absorbing 75 high quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day off right. This is a special blend of ingredients, supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy level, your recovery, and your focus, as well as fighting that dirty little secret we all hate to talk about, aging. That's why you head over, you can give this to your friends, you can recommend it to family members that are looking to give themselves that boost and also stay healthy. As we know, you're going to go ahead and make it easy for you. Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NBA network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NBA network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Oh, baby. Speaking of insurance, if you're going to have a policy and you're going to talk about wanting to get somebody that's going to have high value for you, young stud out there in the world, and he's just going to kind of take a seismic leap in his game over what feels like a very short time period, it's the tandem. It's the Bruce Brown to Nicholas Claxton tandem that further highlights another guy we talked about. Claxton has been absolutely incredible over the closeout of this season. He showcased it with Kevin Durant in their tandem and how he's been able to work with him. But this is what we talk about behind the superstars. Now, if Bruce Brown, Nicholas Claxton are developing this chemistry as well, again, you're going to another level here where supporting players can be effective and execute while the superstars just draw 1 and 2 defenders apiece on a possession-to-possession basis.
Yeah, it's funny with Claxton too, because I thought Drummond was mostly holding up fine. This actually, it was a situation where I would have been just probably fine keeping Drummond around just because of the nature of the Cavs personnel. And then Claxton just came in. And he's just so much more like athletic and versatile. And if you have an attacking guard, you can switch him a little bit easier. And if he's going to be confident finishing around the rim or just sort of getting into the right dunker spot, especially when Bruce Brown has it like flashing to the lane, then we just really have something here, right?
Yep.
Like, and this is that 2-man game. We kind of joked about like it being legendary, but it just looks so confident. And part of that is because these guys, it's a continued confidence of giving Nick Claxton the ball in like high leverage situations. Like he's not going to get it, outside of the key and have to cook it all. But
or maybe he's going to get it inside the arc and he's going to drain a jumper like we all knew that he would. Sorry.
Well, but there's been times where even his finishing around the rim has been super suspect, right?
Yes.
Like it's looked clunky. It's looked like it doesn't have any aggressiveness to it. It looks just sort of the indecision that he would have sort of going up and finishing around the rim. That kind of is all gone for him right now. It looks very fluid, looks very comfortable. He's getting into the right spots. And yeah, he's just giving you these little pieces that you need out of the kind of versatile big. He's never going to be a super dynamic offensive player, at least not this iteration. The Nets don't need him to be. They just need him to be this, right? Like they need him to not get out physical, which the Cavs were always going to kind of have trouble doing anyway because of their personnel. So fine, he matches up well. And if he can just 29, he played a ton of minutes, 13-9, added 5 blocks because he was just in the right place at the right time. A lot of great contests at the rim, 2 specifically, one against Love and one against Markkanen when they got in too close. And it was just like sort of 1-for-1, me versus you, and you have momentum, and he still blocked them. It was just another one. Like, I know his plus minus doesn't look as good, so we won't mention it because it doesn't further our point. But I just thought he played. It was just another one, like complete game, both ends.
And you talk about the 2 blocks there against Love and against Markkanen. This is the facet of his game. We said when he came back and started to get himself into form at the end of the season, he just looks physically a little bit more muscular in the arms, across the shoulders. And that's an area of his game that we talked about before where, boy, for as athletic as he is defensively and the versatility he gives, there's a problem with getting kind of beaten up and eaten up a little bit. And we mentioned this going back to the 76ers matchup towards the back end of this season there, where Nicholas Claxton, tasked with defending Joel Embiid, still found a way to play really smart defensive basketball. Okay, he's bigger, he's stronger than me, but I'm quicker than him. I can make the right defensive moves. I can get my hands in and out to try to get contact off the ball. There's just been so many facets of his game that just seemingly have improved overnight. And what I really wonder is, we saw him last year. We knew he wasn't going to get utilized when it came to playoffs the way that we maybe hoped that he would. But I thought about it in the same way that you can go from this and look back to last year and say, this is the maturation of all the time you put in, of the experience that you got of his last handful of seasons for a guy who, by the way, is 5 days away from his 23rd birthday. It feels like he's been in the league for half a decade. He's still so young. And now I think at just the right time, we're starting to see him maybe take that next little step forward here, which makes him a very viable option when we look at the playoff matchups and how he can take some things off the plate, especially defensively for Kevin Durant and for anyone else really across the board.
Well, this is just a guy that you can see closing, because you just did it. You can see closing just big, high leverage playoff games. And I'm not sure there was a time where we could always really think confidently about that with Nick Claxton. I know there wasn't. I'm sure there wasn't, because we talked about it many times, wondering this exact thing, right? Because
I want him out there. I don't know what the results will be. It feels drastically different now.
I think I can picture it. I think I can picture what it's going to look like. It just had not looked like that for the majority of the last 2 years. Some of it was context. He had a lot of weird, stuff. He was sick for a long time. He had some fluky injuries. So sometimes it's just like, hey, he didn't get enough court time. We might just be finally seeing what happens with him with enough reps, right? Because reps sort of have been an issue for him over the last couple of years, because he just has been not on the court for a variety of reasons. And that was one of the reasons again, like, we could see it. We're like, okay, we know he's a good switch defender. We know he can, like, kind of, man up against guys that are getting to the rim. We know he has actually pretty good instincts. Like, it looks like there's times where the offensive finishing is going to be okay. It just never really got there on a complete level. Now we're finally starting to see it, and we're starting to see, like, oh, can he be in these close games late and you can trust what's going to happen with him? I think that's a very clear yes at this point. Even if there were mistakes now, like, even if things didn't look good for a short period of time, I would still feel confident, because I think the track record is there for him now to say, yeah, like, he can do it. There's going to be some matchups that will not be advantageous for him, but like this Boston series, we'll talk about this. Like, he can definitely play throughout this Boston series, and that's just and they're going to probably need it. And I feel pretty confident with him taking the court in those minutes.
And that feels like the theme, right? So the Brooklyn Nets, they get the job done, 7-8 matchup in the play-in. They lock into the 7th seed. They lock themselves into the playoffs. And the boxes that are getting checked here are confidence, or reliability behind Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. That was a misnomer last year. It was a misnomer earlier in the season. And that's crucial if you're talking about where can this team go, and we'll get into all that. This is where it starts, knowing that the supporting cast can fill the needs you need to every single night.
Yeah, we're going to be back. We're going to break down the matchup against Boston. We'll get the Locked On Boston guys, John Carroll specifically, in here to talk about what that series is going to look like. Adam and I will do some playoff predictions later in the week too. Once we have all of these series lined up, we'll go through. Maybe we'll do a little me versus Adam in terms of where all these series are going to land. I've already got a couple bets in on that side. Get into those later in the week as well. In the meantime, make sure you are subscribing to the Locked On Nets YouTube channel. Love the comments. The comments were so complimentary over the last couple of days. Like, I really appreciate it. I try to respond to a few of them that I could get to today. Read every single one, obviously. Just so appreciative of all the nice words. And if you haven't jumped over there, make sure you are liking, subscribing to the Locked On Nets YouTube channel.
A little bit of time to rest before the Brooklyn Nets officially embark on their playoff run. We make wonder, what will they be up to on the off days? Well, I'll tell you this. My ideal day would be getting in a good workout, listen to some music, talk to my friends and family on the phone, and read and maybe go see a good movie. Stephen Nash.
Oh, one of the all-time great poets. We will be back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.